So this graph right here, this is the one I was telling you about. That's really going to show you how that sinking fund, or how that building and site fund was impacted by that recession that was back in the 2000s. So if you look at that blue part of the graph here, the blue part of the bar, that is that building and site fund. And at one point in time, the district was, had about a $3 to $4 million commitment every year into that fund. Now remember, we have 34 buildings to take care of and to maintain. So, that 3 to 4 million was for that. You can see that took a big hit during that recession because there was a conscious effort made to protect people and keep teachers in classrooms. And so not as much money was put into that building and site fund. In fact, it went down to about $300,000. So think about that, $300,000 a year to maintain the 34 buildings across the district. And then you can see then as the economy picked back up, we've been able to contribute more to that building and site fund and build that back up. You can also see how the ESSER funds now play into that. The big green bars are obviously where we had the bond issues, one back in 2002, 2003. And then in 2014 was another big bond issue. And so you can see there was a large influx of funds from those two things. The reds are those performance bonds that we did. All right, so if the school district right now, we talked about, and I talked about it several slides back, and I said I was going to come back to it. This is that part where I'm coming back to it. If you recall, we said currently the school district assesses 3.5 mils on the residents to pay back existing bond debt. Now that bond debt is going to expire very soon, and when it does expire, then that rate would drop. So what we could do as a school district, instead of letting that rate drop, say we're going to continue. We have to ask the voters and say, would you be in favor of us continuing to assess that 3.5 mils? And if we did that, you can see over different amounts of time how much we would be able to generate from that and how much bonds we'd be able to sell and generate. So if we did a 30-year state qualified bond, it would generate about $250 million. Now those interest rates are just estimated because we all know that interest rates fluctuate up and down, and right now they're going up a little bit, but right now those are just some estimated interest rates. The other question that people have is what's the difference between state qualified and non-state qualified bonds? You can see the interest rates are different in non-state qualified bonds. What does it mean to have state qualified bonds? It means that we take our plan, detailed plan, about 250 to 300 pages long, showing all of the projects that we want to do with this bond money and how it will be spent. We bring it to the state of Michigan, to the Treasury Department, and they go through it line by line, and they look at it, and they make sure that the school district isn't going to use any of those bond money to build a jacuzzi over at Dave Mustinen's house, or to make sure that, no one's getting a, new deck added on to their house or anything like that. And they make sure that that's a joke. That was a joke. Okay. I'm not getting a jacuzzi. So they make sure that all of those bond issues are, all of that financing, all of that money is being spent on school projects. Also, like I said, you cannot use bond money for salaries. So if you had in there that you were going to hire 30 new people, that would not you can't use it for that. So once the state signs off on it and it's state qualified bonds, then you can see you get a little bit better interest rate, which means you can actually generate a little bit more money that way. And I'm going to skip ahead to this next graph because this one is better. Okay. So remember, I also talked about how that debt millage, that 3.5 mils that currently is being assessed, how that kind of drops over the years and how that goes away. So if you look at this graph and you look at the red solid line, you will see that our current 3.5 mils next year is going to drop. And why is that? Well, because those bonds we sold in 2003, my gosh, 20 years already. That's incredible. We were just over at Fortson yesterday, and I was standing in the cafeteria, and I remember standing in that cafeteria when they opened it in '04, and it was hard to believe that that is already going to be close to 20 years old as well. It's amazing. But anyway, so that one's going to be paid off. So when that one's paid off, it's going to drop just down to a little over 1 mil, and that's those bonds from 2014 that we're still paying off, and we still have a few years to pay off on those. What's the purple line? Why is that purple line on top of the red line? What's all this going on? Why is that? I'm confused. Okay, the purple line, remember I talked about how we refinance bonds? Well, guess what we just did? We just did this. We just refinanced some bonds. This bond debt we just refinanced. And because we refinanced that bond debt at a lower interest rate, we're going to be able to pay it off 1 year sooner. So rather than going all the way to 2033 to pay it off, we're actually going to be able to pay it off in 2032. And by paying it off sooner, right, it saves some money. And so that's what that purple line represents. What are the dashed blue lines and the dashed red lines? That is the sinking fund. That is that mill that we could ask the voters to approve. If we went to the voters and said, will you approve allowing us to assess you 1 mil on your property? And if we did that, that would generate about $4.3 million a year. And we could use that $4.3 million every year to do some of these projects around the district, some of these bigger infrastructure projects that need to be done. Over a 10-year period, it'd be about $43 million. Or we could ask for a 2 mil sinking fund. And you can see that generates a little bit more, about $8.6 million a year, 86 over 10. We could go up to 3, but if we did that, then that would actually be higher than what you're currently paying, and so we wouldn't want to do that. We want to keep it below that 3.5. So I want to talk a little bit about the Vision for Infrastructure and Planning Committee. This was a group of citizens that came together starting in January. They had 6 meetings. They did a lot of work. They spent one meeting just getting all this information dumped on them to bring them up to speed about school finance and about our buildings. They went on tours of our buildings and toured several different buildings. And then we talked to them about schools, how setting priorities and what did they feel the priorities of the school district were as far as infrastructure goes. And so a lot of them put together this big long list. And then we said, let's not talk money yet. Let's just talk about what you felt the needs were based on the tours, based on the information provided, based upon what you know as your role in the community. Members of the VIP committee came from a very diverse group. They were students. They were folks who didn't have kids in school. They were parents. They were staff members, business owners. Young, old, east, west. We tried to get a third party actually selected the people to be on that committee out of a pool of applicants that submitted applications to the school district. And so we told them, don't think about money quite yet. Just think about what you feel are the needs of the district. And then once they kind of came up with that list, then we said, okay, here's the different funding mechanisms that can be used. So now knowing that you have these needs and you have this amount of money, how best are we going to put those things together? And so this is not all of the things that the committee came up with. This is just a representation of several of the items that the committee came up with, that the district came up with as far as needs for the district and how the committee ranked those needs. So again, all ideas were on the table. So green parking lots, right? Parking lots that rather than run the water off into a drainage ditch, they actually absorb the water. It's a great idea. Very environmentally friendly. We love it. But when we compare it to looking at the needs of the district and looking at the funding available, how does that rank? And this is kind of how the committee ranked those things. So no bad ideas, all good ideas, just setting priorities for those ideas. The committee also felt, strongly about renovating buildings, but they also felt strongly about new buildings as well, giving it an 8.8 and a 6.5 as being important items. So I think that was an important kind of findings from them. So then the committee was asked to say, listen, so if you have these needs and you have this amount of money, and we know we have, and you know that you want to improve existing buildings, but we know you also are thinking that you might want new buildings in the district, given the amount of money that we have, how would you like to mix that up? How would you like to divide that up? Would you like to do heavy infrastructure and just a little bit of construction, or balance that out, or do a light infrastructure and really heavy construction? And we said, please rank it, first, second, and third choice. And of course, we really didn't get a clear-cut answer. So no, but we did really, because I think if you look at this, you can see light infrastructure and heavy new construction, 2.3, that means that a lot of people in the committee gave that a second or third choice as what they would like. But I think that if you look at the other ones, people gave them a 1 and a 2. So I think that, that mix of infrastructure and new construction is really kind of where the committee was headed. That would be a good recommendation for or a good pathway for the board to follow. And then the committee presented to the board at the March 23rd board study session, and these were the key takeaways. This is directly from the VIP committee, their presentation to the board. This was what they felt were some key takeaways from their work, and you can see that 92% of the committee felt that there was a need for a bond proposal. Large majority supported maintaining 3.5. There was even some that felt, we should go higher than 3.5. And then I think that this, safety and security ranked high in the priority list, but I bolded that one in the middle because I think that one is really, really important. The committee really felt that some people felt there shouldn't be a traditional high school, but many felt there should be. But even those that may not think that we needed a fourth traditional high school felt that moving forward there should be a discussion about a fourth traditional high school, that is something important enough that people in the community are talking about enough that should be part of any discussion moving forward, is the addition of a fourth traditional high school. And I say traditional high school because technically we do have we actually have 5 high schools in the district. Our Magnet High School, but that's very small enrollment. But our Henry Ford Early College is a high school. It's a 9 through 13. If you're not familiar with it, it's a 9 through 13. So students go there for 5 years. They walk out with a 4-year degree, a 4-year high school diploma, and a 2-year college degree, all paid for by the district. And they leave there a year ahead of their peers because, right, instead of they did that in 5 years rather than 6 years. So there are about 600 students in that program currently, and that program is growing. We have large demand for that program, and we have the capability to expand that program as well because of the interest in it. So that's why I say traditional, because this discussion is really about adding that fourth traditional high school to our inventory. And that really needs to be a discussion moving forward. And I think that was something that was very strongly mentioned in the VIP committee. So I think to do them, honor their wishes, I think it's important to point that out. Where are we now? What are our next steps? Right here, this is it. These meetings coming here, we did one at Etzel, Dearborn, Fortson, this one. And as I said, it's not on this slide, but we did add 2 more meetings next week. We will be at River Oaks at 3 p.m. Everybody's invited to that. You don't have to be a River Oaks for anybody. I don't care what school you're in. Come on over, come on by. I love to see you out there. And if you want to hear me say this all over again, come on out. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, let them know how exciting and how much fun of a guy I am to talk about infrastructure needs, and maybe they'll want to come out to that one. And there's one at Salina, too, and that one is at 10 a.m. on Friday, May 6th. So I encourage everyone to come out to those as well. And we also have a website. If you go to dearbornschools.org, you'll find a link to a special website, special web page created just for this that has all kinds of information on it about our infrastructure needs and a lot of other information that was given to the VIP committee that you can look over as well. The other thing that we're talking about doing, and this came up in the discussions with various groups and in the VIP committee, and that is to have the district hire a company to conduct what's called the 30-year longitudinal study of our facility needs and how they support instruction. So we know we have the data and all of the physical needs of our buildings over the next several years and actually next 10 years and what those needs are going to be. But there's also that point that you have to look at and say, when is a school district, when is a school no longer feasible to keep investing money in, and when is it time to tear that school down and build a new school? Or when is it time to add new schools to your inventory? And that's what these companies do. They come in and they kind of, it's a long process. It's anywhere from 6 to 9 months. It involves a lot of community input and a lot of input from staff and community members and stakeholders. It looks at a lot of national and local data. It looks at enrollment projections and all kinds of information like that and puts it together. And most importantly, what it does is it looks at the instructional needs of a school district. Where do you want to be in the future? What do you want your schools to look like in the future? Listen, our old schools, they're beautiful. We have people come and visit our schools all the time, and they cannot get over that our schools are 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, now 100, because there's been such a commitment to keep these schools updated and maintained and looking great. And they're really well taken care of buildings, and a lot of investment has been put into those buildings. But when is it that they are just not able to meet the instructional needs of a school district? You know, instruction has changed a lot over the years. And, you know, the number of kids in a classroom. I'm so old. I remember having, 40 kids in my elementary school classroom. You know, average numbers in Dearborn now are in the low 20s. As an average number. So, things change, instruction changes, technology changes. What are the technology needs? How do kids learn? Are they learning, we don't sit in rows anymore. We sit in groups, or we have common areas for kids to collaborate, especially at the high school level. Virtual learning now is a whole new element, right? We've really taken that step that allows us to get into that virtual learning. And how is that going to impact high school, especially in the years coming up? So that's what these companies do. We've interviewed one of them. We're having a meeting with another one actually tomorrow on Friday. And kind of get a feel for what they can offer, how they go about doing this. Of course, obviously, they would submit bids and it would have to go for board approval. But that is something that came out of saying, rather than, just dumping money into buildings right now, let's look at a long range plan. Let's look out 30 years. Where do we want Dearborn to be? Where do we want Dearborn Public Schools to be? And on May 9th, the Board of Education will hold a meeting right here, right where I'm standing, right here, right behind me at these beautiful desks, this beautiful kiosk right here. The board members will be here, and they will have a meeting. They will continue this discussion and decide, discuss and how this next steps moving forward, where we're going to be with this, and are we putting something on the ballot, are we not? We encourage everybody to take a community survey. It's been open now for almost 3 weeks. It's a great way for you to put in your input. And, I'm going to need a new Dearborn Public Schools sign. we'll put that on the list of items, New Dearborn Public Schools sign for my podium. Okay, but we encourage everybody to take this survey right here. It's a great survey. It's short, takes you maybe about 10 minutes. It's a great way for you to let us know what you're thinking, what your thoughts are. Would you support a bond? Would you not support a bond? Do you like new buildings, new fourth high school, whatever? You can, that's all at that survey. We encourage everybody to jump in and take that. What are some of the ideas that, that has come out of all the different discussions that we've had, whether it be with the VIP committee, with different citizens groups, with our administration, with the board? So some of the things, some of the ideas maybe moving forward that we could do is to place that ballot proposal on the November ballot for a 30-year bond, $250 million. It would keep that 3.5 mill rate right where it's at. Use that money to build some new schools, perhaps. We could also use that for some additions. We could use that to address a lot of those infrastructure needs. And at the same time, we still do that 30-year study, right? At the same time, we could do those things together. The other idea is to place a sinking fund that we talked about on the ballot, right? Just generate just enough money to kind of address those most urgent needs that we have in the district, those most urgent infrastructure needs that we have, and do that while we do that 30-year study. And then once we have that in place, maybe then we go for a big ballot proposal. Just an idea, just a thought, something to noodle around in your head. And then another idea is to place nothing on the ballot in November. Just wait. Let's do that 30-year study. Let's see where we're at. Let's conduct this study, see where we're going with everything, see what our needs, long-range needs are, and not do anything. But, and I will be honest with that one. That's an idea. We can do that. That's fine. But, there are definitely needs, current needs in the district, infrastructure-wise, not only pointed out by the administration, but by our VIP committee as well. So, that's it. I ran a little long. I do apologize for that. I apologize to the folks who are here as well. And I'm sorry I didn't look at you guys. I wasn't being rude, but I was just trying to play to the camera during this whole thing, because I know we have people out there online. So I'll kind of cheat now both ways. I see that I don't have any questions that have come in on my question sheet here. I will refresh my screen one time to see if anything's here. Okay. Okay. It says the mortgage interest rates almost doubled in the last few months. How sure are you about 3% rates posted on the presentation? As I said, those interest rates are not locked in. Those were just estimates. At the time that was put together, that slide actually was done for the VIP group. And absolutely, those interest rates could absolutely be a lot more. And if the interest rates are higher, then definitely it's going to impact the amount of money that you can bond for, that you would receive by selling bonds. So if the interest rates goes up, you may not be able to get a whole $250 million. Maybe you only get $200 million out of that. So absolute great question. You're absolutely right. Those were just estimates. Those were not hard fact numbers that we're basing any decisions on. So, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, you can't do that. You cannot do that. So the question was, if you put a $250 million bond proposal on the ballot, is it just, hey, give us $250 million, we're going to spend it on some school stuff? No, you cannot even do that. Like I said, you have to submit a plan to the state, and even if you don't do state qualified bonds, you still have to you still have to have a plan in place that details all the projects that are going to be done. Just like we did in 2019 when we had a list, we said, this school, here's all the projects, here's how much was going to be spent at that school. We had that exact same thing in 2019. We had it back in 2014, and I was here for the 2002 bond, and we did it back then too. So yes, absolutely great question. We can't just spend that money willy-nilly. It has to be documented. Absolutely. Yep. Yes. In, hey. Oh, you're welcome.
As far as evaluating the agencies or firms that will complete the 30-year longitudinal study,
Yeah.
are you able to comment on how you're evaluating the firms, how you're selecting them, what criteria?
You know, we just started this process, and I mean, literally, this is the very first meeting with them just to find out what they do and how they go about doing it. And we're just trying to get to know, because they've done it for some other school districts. And so we're just trying to get to know them yet. We're not even at that point of evaluating those.
This was requested back in 2019. That's one of the reasons that the bond was defeated was we asked, well, the residents asked for a facilities conditions assessment to outline specifically what are the
Right.
needs, what are the long-term
Yeah.
requirements, in terms of renovations, or taking for the various dilapidated buildings.
Exactly. And we have that data. We had it in 2019 and we have it now for the actual physical needs of the buildings over the next 10 years. So we know that part of it. It's all that other part that we don't know. So yeah, great. Great question.
Okay, the issue with that, it was done by architects and contractors who would be getting subsequent bids, not by independent projects that,
Okay.
the conflict
Yeah.
of interest.
Good point. Good point. So the
I
point,
appreciate the fact that you're putting, the cart, the horse before the cart, this
sure.
time around, and I would be in support of the proposal which says do not place an item on the ballot until you have that longitudinal study, the long-term vision for the school district. Because I found a common theme throughout your presentation, Mr. Mustin, where you said we don't want you to pay more taxes than you're currently paying. You're very cognizant of the sensitivity of the taxpayers.
Sure.
That should not be the concern. It should be what is required in terms of repairs and maintenance. And then we need to present the value proposition to the voters. Yes, you might be paying a little bit extra in the event that that's justifiable or it's, rationalized
Sure.
and corroborated by actual data, then you can present that to the voters. So first do the facilities condition assessment by an independent third party evaluator and then present that to the voters.
Great. Thank you. It's great feedback. That's awesome. So, okay. So I got a couple, let's see. Okay, so same question came in, how do you screen these companies and what is the selection criteria? So, again, like I said, we're in the very early process of that, and we'd have to develop that criteria for screening those. Will the two buildings purchased at HFC reduce the population at the high schools? If so, by how much? They could, that could impact, it could impact the enrollment or the numbers at the high school. Currently, because we have magnet programs that exist at the Berry Career Center, that does impact the daily enrollment at the high schools. So it doesn't impact it. There's still an impact of the overall enrollment at those high schools, but the daily enrollment is impacted by the different magnet programs that exist at the Berry Center, and then at the Henry Ford Early College wouldn't impact the enrollment at the high schools as much, only in the fact that if more students enrolled in those programs and we expanded those programs, then there could be less kids at the other traditional high schools. So a slight impact on those as those programs expanded and grew. So, okay, that's all I have. Those were the last few questions that came in, and refresh one more time, and that's it. So, again, I want to thank everybody for taking some time to join us tonight, stopping in. I want to thank you guys for being here this evening and taking time to actually physically be here. We've had people at some of the other forums as well, and appreciate you taking the time to get out and get the information. We can put out a lot of stuff, but if people aren't actually taking the time to absorb it, then it doesn't help. So thank you. We appreciate it. Appreciate the great feedback too and the questions. appreciate all of you for taking some time to tune in. Remember, we do have 2 more if you're interested. And we have that board meeting on May 9th as well. Don't forget to take the survey. You can find links for that on our Dearborn Public Schools website and find it on the First Bell, which is our newsletter that is part of that website. Plenty of time to watch the draft and see who the Lions pick at number 2, and all happening within a matter of, just an hour or so from now. So thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening, and have a safe and restful week.